I want to welcome in our powerhouse panel. Project One National Advisory Board member, Christopher Arps. Welcome. And
Welcome.
former Trump campaign aide, Rick Gates.
See you.
Morning.
Good morning.
So let's start with what's on everyone's mind. We're hearing about this all across the country, but beginning in New York, the mask mandates. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul says her mask mandate is not making a difference in New York, and she's blaming Mayor de Blasio. Let's take a listen.
There's very little difference between what we're doing and what New York City has already done. In fact, New York City doesn't offer the mask option. So if New York City had not taken their own steps, then we would have absolutely had that surgical approach.
It's a lot of word salad, but some counties in New York are opposing this mandate, including incoming Nassau County executive, an old friend of mine, Bruce Blakeman. And from California, Pennsylvania, other states may follow suit. So what do you think is going to happen? Rick?
Yeah, I think there's been a tremendous shift toward getting rid of the vax mandates and also even the mask mandates. If you look at what's happening in Florida, you look at what's happening in Texas, other states that have been able to adopt procedures that allow them not to have to go into these draconian measures, and they're actually having better success in states like New York, California, et cetera. I think that's the model that we should all look at and see if that works. Then let's pursue that at a national level, not just at a state level.
I'm curious, though. All of these new mask mandates seem to have been triggered, so to speak, by Omicron. And yet, look at the number of deaths from Omicron. One in the UK. In a usual flu season in the United States, we have at least 20,000 deaths. That's the record. That's the number for 2019 to 2020, before the pandemic started. So no one's masking up to prevent the flu. What do you think, Christopher?
Well, I read a report in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that said only 3% of the new COVID-19 cases in the United States are because of the Omicron variant. Our own Attorney General Eric Schmidt filed a lawsuit a couple of weeks ago against mask mandates, and he won that suit. And all across Missouri last week, we're seeing school districts and other municipalities dropping their mask mandates. The city of St. Louis and the city of Kansas City have sued the Attorney General. They say that he is creating chaos. But I think people are tired of masks, and people know that the masks really don't work. Now that we have vaccines, this is a virus that we're just going to have to learn to live with.
Well, and we may be overreacting to this new variant, Omicron. NYU in New York City just announced that no one can attend classes without a booster, a third shot, because of Omicron. And yet, to repeat myself, they're not requiring that anyone even have a flu shot to attend class. Well, moving on to another topic, this is very much in the minds of everyone concerned with foreign policy and national security. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping will be holding a virtual meeting today to discuss what they say are the tensions in Europe and aggressive U.S.-NATO rhetoric. Rick, what do you think will come out of that?
Well, I think they've already started. They started early this morning, and it turned into a love fest between Xi and Putin, which is quite expected. And this is what a lot of people in the U.S. and the West have thought about these two kind of teaming up. And it's a very dangerous environment. The Biden administration has zero successes on the foreign policy stage. They've created more issues than they've resolved. And they've driven Xi and Putin together. So while Xi and Putin are meeting, they're talking about the great trade and economic relationship that they're going to have. They're talking about how well each other's handle diplomatic relations. But most importantly, what they're saying is that they're both steadfast in making sure that there are no threats to their sovereignty of each country. What does that mean? That means Ukraine and Taiwan are in big trouble over the coming weeks and months.
And I'm also concerned because they're conducting joint military operations and also cooperating and helping Iran evade U.S. economic sanctions. Christopher, what do you think?
You know, I think that this is just saber rattling between Russia and China. You remember during the Cold War, we were always concerned about those two countries getting together and maybe being a foe of the United States. I had a foreign policy military expert on my radio show last week, and he said that he is not too concerned about China and Russia cooperating. He said each of those two countries have their own interests, and those interests don't always align.
I don't know. I remember when President Obama said we shouldn't be worried about Putin, and he was proven wrong. Let's come back to the U.S. for a second. President Biden spoke at the Democratic National Convention Christmas party yesterday and said he's very hopeful that the Democrats will clean house in 2022, extending their majorities. Take a listen.
Now we look at 2022. I want to tell my Republican friends, get ready, pal. You're going in for a problem. And we need to stay unified.
Rick?
That's quite a lot of rhetoric. I think that I have a theory that Biden reads what is ever on the teleprompter, whether he actually understands, believes it or not. And I think this is a scenario where he's living in an alternate universe. There is nothing statistically, polling, even interviews with individuals that's showing that the Democrats are on the right path to keep the House and Senate in 2022. So, look, you're the president. You got to go out there and you got to wave the pom-poms and rah-rah and say that you're going to win. But this is a far stretch even for Biden, and I clearly don't think he believes it.
I'm listening to what Americans are saying, and what they're telling me is that as long as prices keep going up, especially at the meat counter and in the rest of the grocery store, Democrats are going to go down in defeat in 2022. What do you think, Christopher?
Yeah, and even besides all of that was mentioned before, history is not on the side of the Democrats. You know, usually the party that's in power loses seats in the House. You couple that with a president that has a 36% approval rating. His vice president has a 28% approval rating. Prices are rising. Consumer confidence is low. The Democrats are going to be in a world of hurt next year.
Well, and especially with crime, too. We're going to come back with our power panel at 7 o'clock and hear more about the Democrats' very dim prospects in 2022, with crime rising, prices rising, and American anger rising.